Welcome, everybody, to the show. Today we are reviewing the week. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rube.
Great. So it was a pretty special week. We started it off with Kimberly Parker. What were your thoughts about that one?
It's always nice to see Kimberly. And you know what? When you look at your colleagues throughout your career, you have a couple that are really close to you. And I would say Kimberly is one of my top two people that I've got to talk with and get to learn from over the years. And it was just great having her on. And we had talked about doing it for a while now. And she's probably the one person most people have asked me, when are you going to have Kim on? When are you going to have Kim on? And I'm like, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And when it did, it was great. And, I'm a little embarrassed though, Ruben. I'm not sure if you caught it, but I called her an English teacher at one point.
I caught it.
That was pretty embarrassing. Anyway, I do quite a bit of embarrassing things here online, and I wish I was a little bit more on top of it, but I'm going to try to be better. But yeah, I called her an English teacher. It was a little bit, she probably caught it too. And she just, like a good lady she is, she just kept going with it. But man, she taught us like lessons on that episode, right? I mean, that was pretty special.
I'm like trying to juggle the different things I could say about her, because there were several things and we got several messages.
Yeah.
I will say that there's a couple of things that I really liked what she said, including my classroom is my art. So, well, if any of you do art in any way, visual, performing, whatever, you're always trying to improve it, and it's your personal thing. It's your person. So typically, at least as a teacher, I don't think of my classroom as my art. It's a separate thing. But if you put it in that framework and that through that lens, you are constantly trying to improve it, and you are kind of cranking it. I'm looking for the right word. You're just focusing it, making it better, making it your own. So I really like that, and I think it kind of informs her other decisions, because I think at one point she says she mops her floors sometimes, because anything that gets into the way of the presentation, the connection that you make in the classroom, your art, you'll try to improve. You'll try to make better. So this was a really good interview. And
can I add something though to Rup? Because when she was on, she mentioned this regarding having more balance, and also being able to teach that to the young people she's mentoring as teachers. And I know Kimberly Parker as somebody who has her hands in on everything, and she does it excellent. However, she started realizing that I'm not. It's taking a lot out of me, and really let me find some balance in my life so I could be better at a couple of things I focused on. And she started doing that. And you know what? It's just great that she was able to figure that out. I know that I learned from that. I've been thinking about that all week. Like, there's some things I need to take out of my schedule. And that was just a great reminder. I really appreciated her sharing that and being vulnerable and transparent about that.
There's a message that was sent to us from somebody who sent several emails, but including one that said, Miss Parker and Mr. Nanoski introduced us to camping through the science club. We've been camping ever since, and it's something I plan to pass on to my son. I can't think of a better tribute to a teacher to say, what you taught me, I'm going to pass on to my children. So I'm glad that people are reflecting, and that there's some great memories of a former teacher that we could be part of, and that we can bring to you through this channel. So very nice interview. Definitely got a lot out of that interview with Miss Parker. So please check it out. And then the next day we talked to Mr. Paul James.
Yeah. Again, another colleague of mine who I've always, there's certain people you think about a lot. And I think about Paul because of a couple of things. He used to always wear a nice tie and shirt. And it made me realize that, respect your profession, respect what you do. And he does. He respects what he does, and he respects, the kids. You could tell that, by him spending all that time to get his classroom management on, on top level, that he cares. And I'm glad he brought that book out. It's still in print, so hopefully people will see that. And because you know what, teaching middle school, Ruben, as you know, half the battle is classroom management. And if you can't get that class managed, if you can't get that class, just doing the simple pieces that need to get done, even in the beginning of the period, like how he says it just takes row while they're doing a couple items and maybe a journal or whatever it is he has them doing. It's so important. And I just felt like I learned that back then, and I always refer back to him. When I think about those type of things, I go, well, that's where I learned it. I learned it from Paul James. And I'm so glad he was able to come on. I know he was a little nervous about coming on, but I thought to myself, why would he be? He's just such an expert. But I could see, he hadn't talked like this in a while. And then again, of course, we just benefited from his expertise and his.
So you mentioned a book. You said that book. Well, the book you're referring to that he mentioned is titled Classroom Management for Elementary Teachers by Carolyn Everson. I did link it to the video, to the description. So yeah, I agree. I didn't really know him well, Paul James, except for maybe a couple of brief conversations, but his reputation followed him. And I mentioned in the video how students would talk about him, keeping them lined up outside it to get the routine proper within the first week or so of class, and taking your time to get it right, which was an influence on me. It's okay. And now this is more of a younger classroom, younger ages, probably middle school and younger, but taking your time to get those procedures right is worth it. I also wanted to mention an email we got about Mr. James. This is really nice as well. Mr. James was my middle school science teacher at Elizabeth Learning Center in Cudahy, 1996 to 1998. No way he remembers me, but he was one of my biggest influences. He made science really approachable, and the discipline he instilled in us was crucial for my development. I'm now an engineer, in part thanks to Mr. James.
What a great tribute to him, right? Jeez.
And I also would encourage people to watch that video because he talks about teaching the students extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. And I think that's pretty critical, especially for the younger ages, because what is the reason you're doing something? Is it for show or for outside reasons, or for what you are motivated to do, what some of your personal goals are? Very important lesson there. So it's a good video. Please check it out.
Definitely watch that one.
We ended the week with a movie review, which is Without Limits. What about that?
I'm not surprised that it's one of our favorites, I think, or at least one of the movies that we both appreciated. And, Steve Prefontaine, he definitely passed away way too young. One of the greatest runners, distant runners that this country's had, at least Oregon for sure. And, in the film, it talks about one of his records, his high school records, is still standing just because it was such a powerful race that he ran, and he did a good time. And so, as I watched that film a couple times recently, I realized that, he was such a leader too. I didn't mention that too much, but he totally went after the Amateur Athletic Union. This is an organization that really took advantage of athletes. We're talking about athletes who are not pros, right? Amateurs. And had them show up, and they made all this money off these athletes. And he fought for, hey, I should be able to go to a meet and be able to choose what meets I go to, right? And not have to be made to do that and then make no money. I was reading somewhere where, they docked him for like taking, because he got shoes from Nike and Adidas, and they're like, no, you're an amateur. You're not supposed to be, taking free gifts like that. I'm like, what? That's what he does, is run. And even those little these little small little things, they dinged him for it. And so I just felt like in this film, it really showed who he was. He was a leader. And now he was he definitely was somebody who kept pushing himself, but a lot of people around him just totally fed off him. And I just thought that was just a great part of the film that displayed itself there. And I just really liked the film a lot.
So couple of things I want to say about Without Limits. First of all, I remember when it was released, I was really disappointed at the lack of talk about the film, or the way it got lost in the shuffle. I don't think it did well in the box office, and it got lost also with that other film about, I think it was just called Prefontaine. And so people didn't really get a chance to see it. The other thing is that I didn't mention a couple of moments in the film that I think are really powerful. One of them being, at one point, Prefontaine tells his girlfriend that talent is a myth. Now, this is one of the things that I was trying to get at in terms of some of the ideas expressed.
Right.
One of them, he mentions that he believed, his theory was that talent is a myth, and that what made him successful was a secret, or something that was true to him. And what was that secret? Was that he could tolerate pain more than anybody else. So if you think about that concept, this can be applied to anything. I mean, think about somebody who's trying to master their weight, or something regarding health, and some behavior they're trying to do. If you can tolerate pain, you can do anything, including lose weight or master a type of skill where you have to endure things, endure self-discipline, which is painful. That is really critical to many things in life. It's such a useful tool if you think of it like that. And then the other thing was something that Donald Sutherland said, which is this: if you can find meaning in an absurd pastime like running, then you can find meaning in another absurd pastime, life. Now, on the face of it, it sounds very nihilistic, right? Like, oh my gosh, life is an absurd pastime, but not really, because I think the idea of running is kind of absurd. It's just,
Right.
it's this thing, that is arbitrary thing that people have set up. People run and then they stop, and it takes a lot of it. Talk about painful, but there's an absurdity to it. But people who keep doing it really find some meaning in it. And if you can find meaning in that, then when you're in a difficult spot in life, you can kind of, with what the coach's theory is, that you can kind of endure it a little bit more. And there's some real value to that, because there will be at times in people's lives where they find life to be absurd. And there's something to some of these sports like running. And it reminded me even of the Chariots of Fire runner, who said he found some kind of glory, God's glory, in his running. And that's why he found it in something that was very, very necessary to his development as a human, his running. So really good stuff. Without Limits, I really love that film.
Definitely. You guys got to go watch that one. It's good.
Thank you for joining us, and catch us next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.